My enemies are many. My equals are none.
If you had asked me 15 years ago, heck if you'd asked me 5 years ago, if I would have ever been able to play one of my all-time favorite Total War games in the palm of my hand and on the go, I would have called you crazy. But for the past days, that's exactly what I have been doing. Just like with Rome, Medieval 2 and Empire, Feral Interactive has managed to create another premium and full-size experience of yet another Total War game. This time, the one and only Napoleon. And just like with the previous games, Napoleon on mobile gives you the full desktop experience with added benefits. So let's get into why this is my new favorite Total War experience on iOS and Android. First of all, Napoleon. I love Napoleon Total War. On a game engine level, it perfected what Empire offered just a year before, looking better, feeling better, and offering a host of mechanics that Empire at the time just did not. Where Empire's campaign was a complete sandbox experience with few to no real mission events or narratives to frame your experience, except for the American campaign of course, Napoleon offered two smaller unique campaigns that followed the man himself through his campaign in Italy and one following the campaign in Egypt. The big one is of course the Europe campaign, which sees mostly the entirety of Europe, from Gibraltar in the southwest to Moscow in the northeast included. It is the map we always wanted for Empire in terms of size, with more cities and towns where they should be, a map that made the continent feel larger and more detailed. Of course, what you gain in detail, Napoleon takes away in scope, and things like overseas resources or colonies are only really included through trade lanes you must capture in order to profit from them. Napoleon for mobile includes everything the original game offers, so here you'll get every Napoleonic campaign, including the Peninsular campaign and all of the DLC units, with that campaign taking place on a massive map of Iberia in the later stages of the war. And the Coalition campaign of course, meaning you get to play as the enemies of Napoleon. But wait, you see that map? Something is here that is not in the PC version. That's right, Feral has done it again and expanded upon the original. Because the campaigns of the Coalition no longer offers just the simple choice of England, Prussia, Austria and Russia, but adds in the Ottoman Empire, Spain, Portugal, and even Denmark as playable factions, the campaign now significantly expands on your gameplay opportunities and literally doubles the number of playable factions in the game. Additionally, the Peninsular campaign now allows you to play Portugal as well. Napoleon for mobile obviously brings the visual improvements the original game did over Empire, but it also brings with it the mechanical improvements Empire received for mobile. This includes things like the vastly updated research feature, where you can now invest a variable amount of research into different techs at once, but since Empire for mobile was the one to receive retrofitted Napoleon features like attrition, dynamic replenishment, and faction liberation, those are of course not new here, but remain in the game as they always did. The only feature Napoleon does not feature on mobile is online multiplayer, which seems to be a very tough thing to implement in a port like this, prompting the team to continue their focus on enhancing the single-player experience instead. One of my favorite features, which is less of a feature and more of a new artistic vision, is the updated main menu and some of the UI aspects. The main menu has gone from dark blue and gold to this provocative red and gold, somehow giving the game a completely new but still recognizable Imperial vibe. The UI windows themselves have been given the Empire treatment, but with a Napoleonic coat of paint, coming in with the blue and gold and adding an awesome French eagle above the accept button. Just like with Empire, I love how Feral has designed the UI for Napoleon, making simple information accessible in the Faction tab, or my personal favorite, the Diplomacy tab, where everything from faction flags, extensive relation information, the map, and even your personal relations with other factions and its changes are present. In this way, Napoleon makes it easy to find out what's going on, and that is crucial in a strategy game. In other words, whereas Napoleon is definitely less of a revolution when compared to its own PC version and the leap Empire for mobile is compared to its PC version, Napoleon still feels fresh and sexy. There's something about that map that still enthralls me. Something about that lighting, the subtle fog and sophisticated depth of field effects, the darker water that so smoothly waxes and wanes off the shores of Europe. It's the snow in the winter and the green in the summer. More than most, it's the fact that the soundtrack of Napoleon is so incredibly iconic. The tracks aren't many necessarily, but they are magical, melancholic and churchly, adding a sense of heaviness, longing and gravitas to the experience. I cannot say how much this music means to me, but there's something about Napoleon, something about how the sum of its parts that aren't too different from Empire, but different enough that they lend Napoleon that special, indescribable sense of je ne sais quoi, or in English, immersion. That's my personal translation anyway, do with that as you will. The battlefields of Napoleon also make their return, of course, looking as great as ever. Farrell has pretty much perfected the art of mobile warfare as far as I'm concerned, and if you played Empire, Medieval 2 or the updated version of Rome for mobile before this, you'll know exactly what awaits you here. Much like playing different Total War battles on PC, the mechanics of movement, organization and so on are pretty much identical to what you know from before, which is a good thing, since it means that there's nothing new to learn or wrap your head around when coming from previous titles. What Napoleon's battles does do though, is bring with them the beautiful visuals from the original, giving every battlefield, every gunshot, cavalry charge, and marching band a subtle but significant facelift. Moving away from the somewhat harsh exterior look of Empire, to the more refined, almost grand painting-like feel of Napoleon. Napoleon does admittedly have lower quote-unquote unit diversity than Empire, owed to its limited time period and geographical limits, but you're not playing Napoleon for its unit diversity. You're playing it for the epic battles, the musket flares and smoke, and the masterclass tactics you have to use to overcome the enemy's armies. Line infantry makes up the brunt of your force in this game, while cannons give you an important edge, both in terms of long-range passive pounding and short-range complete annihilation if you manage to place them right, remembering of course to change your ammunition from round cannonballs to canister shots. The experienced commander will also see fit to make use of sniper units, few in number but carrying long-range rifles and are able to hide, making them capable of harassing the enemy before they even get the chance to shoot back at you. In the same vein, cavalry will rarely win a fight on their own, but when used as an auxiliary unit, they can mean the difference between victory and defeat. So while the main brunt of your force is tied up with the enemy, the cavalry can swoop in from the sides or behind, interrupting the enemy line infantry and dealing devastating morale blows they may never recover from. This relative simplicity is what makes Napoleon so fun, because it allows a truly dedicated player to make use of the obvious strengths and weaknesses of each unit, taking into account battlefield elevation, terrain, weather effects and unit differences, stats and numbers to come out on top. A simple example of this is when I, as Franz, fought the Austrians outside Vienna, outnumbered literally more than 2 to 1. In my first attempt, I failed to make proper use of my cannons, placing them far behind my line. This kept them safe, allowing them to shoot at the enemy for the duration of the battle, but it never allowed them to become the true unit destroyers they are capable of being. As such, Austria's superior numbers managed to overrun and defeat me. In my second attempt, I snatched victory from the jaws of defeat, my force remaining although strongly diminished, but the men of the hour were indeed my cannon crew. This time, I placed them up front alongside my line infantry, so that when the enemy approached, I could switch to the shorter range canister shot, which absolutely and instantly deleted large numbers of the units they targeted, prompting the enemy to simply die or flee in fear of being hit one more time. This battle would have been close to impossible for me to win without not just my cannons, but the correct use of them, symbolizing how a unit's proper use can turn the tide of history. Of course, the naval battles of Napoleon are here as well, working like they did in Empire, but with Napoleon's features like allowing you to repair ships during battle. They look as beautiful as always and play well too, perhaps even easier than the land battles because there is technically less to handle than a big battlefield where everything happens all at once. Of course, you must know to maneuver on the high seas as well, but you have a little more time to think here. What really brought the naval side of things to the forefront for me was that I could now play as Denmark, or Denmark-Norway as it were, perhaps my new favorite faction in Napoleon apart from the French. The reason for this is that it's a small faction and a relatively weak one, yet one situated in a quite good position. It's up north and starts off neutral with every faction except for trade agreements with the British and Prussians, allowing you to kind of play the field if you play your cards right. But Denmark's ace in the hole might just be its high-tier military shipyard in Norway, Stavanger to be specific, a dry dock where you can recruit the 80-gun ship of the line from the beginning. This allows it to, say if you join the French alliance like I did, close off the Baltic Sea to the coalition, like I did when I time and time again sank Russian merchant ships attempting to profit from overseas colonial trade. Just a few dozen turns in, I found myself in war with what basically amounts to the whole world thanks to my allegiance with the French, turning the map into a truly divided Europe. Britain holding out on its island, but the French alliance controlling the west and much of Central Europe, while the entirety of the east was coalition territory. Through cunning political maneuvering, state gifts, trade agreements and embargoes, I had secured alliances with the most powerful states in the south, while I was seriously struggling with a Prussian invasion and a hostile Sweden. The overwhelming Prussian attack eventually proved too strong for me, forcing me to make use of unconventional tactics. By giving up my German possessions, I decided instead to rapidly move into Prussian territory, taking and looting city after city for much needed gold and hitting the Prussians where it hurt, their practically undefended heartland. The goal was to force the Prussians to sign a peace agreement before they could make it to Copenhagen, but this proved difficult, and now I find myself in serious trouble. But what fun trouble can be, and how exciting it is to play a smaller faction in a campaign that's all about the major powers and empires of Europe. There are a few more things I would have loved to see in Napoleon that's not currently here, and frankly I don't know if we'll see any further updates. I would have loved to see the implementation of a true naval crossing blockade feature, because for a faction like Denmark, being able to block your enemies from entering its home island is crucial and would add strategic depth to its campaign and the significance of navies. I would love to see Ferrell expand the map further, include Egypt, the Levant and Anatolia for a longer campaign and new biomes. Because if there's one thing I love about the Egypt campaign, it is fighting in those beautiful sandy desert environments, and I would love to see the Ottoman Empire better represented as well. In addition, the campaign AI continues to be hit or miss. If you want good relations with someone in Napoleon, I've learned that state gifts are absolutely essential, but, and it's a big one, good relations are not a guarantee for peace. The most bizarre happening was when my campaign was completely destroyed by the Ottomans declaring war on me, Denmark, out of nowhere, destroying my previous alliance with the French, having them join the war against me, making it so that I found myself in war with everyone. Not great. And even though I love that the AI actually makes use of things like trade embargoes and diplomacy, which is awesome, it's weird that Spain, in trade for an alliance with me, wanted me to trade embargo the Batavian Republic, i.e. the Netherlands, even though they are in an alliance with each other, trade with each other, and are in the French coalition together. I'd love for these weird quirks to get ironed out if possible, because it really makes a difference between an immersive campaign and something that can quickly spiral into insanity. Luckily, the game gives you plenty of backup saves to return to, which allowed me to persuade the French into breaking their misguided alliance with the Ottomans and have them join me in my defensive war with them instead. Timeline fixed. Napoleon Total War for mobile is a masterclass in porting a desktop experience to the small screen, and proves once again that Ferrell not only loves the games it's working on, but knows how to translate these large experiences to handheld devices. While some issues from the PC version persist, like an occasionally weird AI or jaggy anti-aliasing textures on shadows, which yes also plague the PC version, I've experienced very few if no technical issues or game-breaking bugs. This is the Napoleon Total War you remember, but better, larger, with more factions and tech innovations you've only seen on mobile before. And what's more, Napoleon also features modding support on mobile, which means you can now expand your experience further if modders decide to work their magic. I have had so much fun with Napoleon, and especially with its new factions, and highly recommend the game in this new version. Let me know what you think of Total War Napoleon for mobile in the comments. Remember to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!